Hello, this is Chris Allen. It's a small presentation dedicated to Julius Malema. Julius Malema is possibly the most divisive politician in South Africa, but I have to wonder if he modelled himself on IDI Amin of Uganda. There's a strong likeness between the two in appearance, but in addition to that, Idi Amin, he was an army major general in charge of the army, and after becoming president, he gave himself promotion to field marshal. So his full title, this is obviously according to Idi Amin, is President for Life, Field Marshal Dr. Idi Amin Dada. Okay, that's his full title which he gave himself. And add on to the end of that, he also had a CBE, and the CBE stood for Conqueror of the British Empire. So he was President for Life, Field Marshal Dr. Idi Amin Dada CBE, which is maybe just a little bit pretentious. Julius is quite similar. I mean, Julius, after he was president of the Youth League and he had his difficulties with the ANC, he started his own party, and he wasn't just happy with being president, no. He became the CIC, Commander-in-Chief. Of course, after Commander-in-Chief, what he's got in mind, Julius is a very ambitious youngster. So after he's Commander-in-Chief, he probably wants to be President of South Africa, maybe even President of Africa, or King, or Emperor, Juju. I don't know, but he does seem to have a very similar character to Idi Amin. Malema has been much in the news lately, but nobody seems to understand why he acts the way he does. I see him as a schizophrenia sufferer who can hold several different opinions at the same time. He can also project different personalities. Possibly the most controversial thing about Julius is his anti-white stance. He loves to stir up racial hatred against whites. One must realize that he actually needs to stir up racial strife in South Africa, because without it he has no reason to exist. The anti-white hatred is his main selling point. Without that, he's got nothing. What other reason could he have for being a leader? He hasn't really got any reason at all, except that he's anti-white and he wants to cut the throat of whiteness. That's all he's got. He's not the only one who loves stirring up racial strife, but he's by far the noisiest. Jacob Zuma also likes to stir up anti-white sentiment, but he loves Indians, especially Guptas. Julius doesn't like Indians so much, and he had a special dislike for the late Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. For some reason, I don't know, but he seemed to want to use Pravin's second name, which is Jamdas or something to that effect, as some sort of insult. I'm not quite sure why, but that's what Julius felt. For someone who is so outspoken against whites, it's strange that Julius doesn't seem to mind employing white lawyers. This picture is probably how Julius sees himself when he plays on stage with his gun. I'm sure Sylvester Stallone would be very jealous. Julius is one of the few South African leaders who are not proud of the Springboks winning the Rugby World Cup. And I must say, yeah, that winning the Rugby World Cup is something pretty special. I can just imagine the country would go berserk if Bafana won the Soccer World Cup or Football World Cup. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. But the Rugby World Cup, the Springboks have now won it 4 times, which is a magnificent achievement. But the reason Julius doesn't like the Springboks is because he believes they are a bastion of white supremacy. The real reason is that Springboks are a threat to his anti-white agenda. They are living proof that when black and white work together, much can be achieved. And there's no contradicting that. They have achieved much. Of course, there are other races in the team as well, but Julius is concerned that they disprove his anti-white ideas. He is concerned that his followers will come to doubt his main teaching, that black people are downtrodden by white racists. So, the Springboks must fall. Julius cannot be seen praising the magnificent achievement of the Springboks simply because they disprove his anti-white narrative. The future for Julius? Well, Julius has now been sentenced to 5 years in jail. How did it happen? What caused it to happen? Julius is like a naughty child, always pushing boundaries, confident that he will not cross a line. It is always important to Julius that he remains in the news as the daredevil leader who has little respect for authorities. In the past, he has avoided trouble for various transgressions, such as the on-point tender scandal. I actually don't have that much knowledge about the on-point scandal, but I do know that Julius was in court with the co-accused, and the co-accused got sick, so the case was postponed. And since that time, nothing has ever happened. So what's going on there? Why that happened? I don't know. I rather suspect it's because Julius has lots of knowledge about people like Jacob Zuma, maybe. Then we come to the VBS looting scandal. Of course, we all know, thanks to the media, especially the Daily Maverick, we all know what happened in the VBS looting scandal. Julius and his buddies helped VBS get rid of quite a bit of money. And the result is that Julius positively hates Daily Maverick with a passion. His personal favorite thing that he got off for was the Kill the Boer song. For some strange reason, the judges of the Constitutional Court decided that this was not hate speech. My personal opinion is that I cannot imagine anything being more hateful than singing about killing somebody, especially killing, and this does apply to a particular race. It applies to white people and even more importantly Afrikaner white people. But that is what that song is all about. So it is, to my mind, it's hate speech, and the Constitutional Court got it wrong. There have been other occasions where Julius was in court for pushing boundaries, and he managed to get away with them. This latest stunt has been his undoing. He pushed the boundary a little too far. He alleges that the charges against him are political. Actually, the crime was political. He was trying to demonstrate to his followers that he was the brave, untouchable leader that they needed. He was projecting the Rambo Malema image. Of course, that image is extremely important to Julius. Well, what now for Julius? Julius will be appealing his sentence of 5 years. Only time will tell if he has any success with that. It is always possible that he might actually get a longer sentence. Firing an assault weapon on stage, obviously against the law. But if you also sing songs about killing people from the same stage, it could be seen as aggravating circumstance, leading to a heavier sentence. Making threats against the magistrate and prosecutor are probably also a bit silly in the circumstances. To his followers, he will probably spread the message that he is being persecuted by white monopoly capital. He might even advocate for violence against whites. This might not end well for Julius, as it might lead to further charges, which might keep him in jail for longer than he might like. For his sake, I hope his legal team advises him to tone down a bit. Julius will need to curb his enthusiasm a bit. I'm sure he has noticed that others have been charged for inciting violence, and he should be careful with his public utterances. He should take note that other politicians also started playing with firearms in public after his display in East London. This demonstrates the need to make an example of him. It is definitely not a good time for defiant public statements, but I wonder if he can keep his mouth shut. We shall see.